that starting in late March, we had some metallurgical challenges when we were transitioning from the oxide part of the deposit to the transitional and eventually the fresh material, which is contained in a carbonaceous ore body. Let me see if I can actually get it up on the screen to kind of show everybody where we are. Now, I don't think you need to be a geologist to see this. The brown mocha stuff, that's oxide, looks pretty good. And then you can see where it gets to that dark black stuff. That's our host rock in carbonaceous schist. Now, the issue with carbon is that that's the primary way you wind up recovering gold. That's why they call it a carbon in leach or a carbon in pulp. And obviously we knew about that. It's pretty easy to see, obviously, in the deposit now that it's opened up. And then when we were actually drilling this through our core, you could very clearly see the transition zone. It's actually the reason why we developed our plant as a carbon in leach. The primary difference being that we don't introduce cyanide into the mill. And then the first time that we actually introduce cyanide is when you have these the slurry in our leach tanks that are there with activated carbon that acts as a much stronger recoverer of gold than you would see in the native carbon in our ore body. Now, the net effect of that for a whole host of reasons, and I'll go over each of them in a bit, meant that our expected recoveries should have been going down from about 93 to 86%. We went from the oxide material down to the sulfides, the fresh material. And when we were in oxides for the first year of operation, we were averaging about 92.7% versus that 93, which is about as close as you can get from a real life data perspective. And then we reported our Q2 numbers, which had the three full months of having this diminution of recovery. Our average recovery was 74.5%, right? So there was, let's call it anywhere from 1,000 to an 1,100 basis point differential between what we were experiencing over at the mine versus what we were getting over at the plant. Now, there was a few primary reasons why that was occurring. So let's say if you take this 1,100 basis point difference, about 80% of that 1,100 basis point were associated with two things, and then there was about 50 different reasons that dealt with the remaining items. But we'll deal with the first two. The first one is that our entire plant over here is using recycled water. It's a zero discharge facility. I'll show you a little bit about what we do with our tailings. This is a dry stack tailings storage facility. After our tailings are filtered and pressed, you could see our filter press over there. It takes out all the water, and then we take that water and put it back into the plant. Now, we designed our system that recycled water should be killing all of the activated cyanide, the free cyanide, before it went back into the mill. And for a whole host of reasons, we were not able to do that very effectively in March and April, May, and to a certain extent in June through the detoxification system that we had over at the plant. So we had to make a fairly sizable change to our flow sheet where we changed our what's called an Inco air SO2 process to detoxing our cyanide with the use of common bleach, sodium hypochlorite solution that basically takes the free cyanide and turns it into a cyanate before the recycled water goes to the plant. Now, I'm happy to say that really since the July, we've been getting our cyanide levels down to effectively zero. It's been taking it down from we were experiencing maybe 15 or 20 ppm of cyanide really in the latter part of Q2, and now it's down to about 2, which really you don't have any major effects. So our detox system is working. Our CIL is actually working as a CIL versus a CIP. I mean, the main difference between a CIL and a CIP is you kind of cycle through all your cyanide in the slurries of your mill before it actually gets to those carbon and leach tanks that you see over to the left, and that has been resolved. And that was actually a very big difference in terms of our experience with the recoveries. Now, the second bit is really more lithological in nature. So the way that we mine the ore body is through a very, very selective process, where you can see those faces over here. Those are 6-meter benches, but we don't mine on 6 meters. You can see on that phase 2 pit that we have on the top part of the right, there's a 3-meter bench over there. We also don't mine on 3-meter half benches. What we do is that we take channel samples every 4 meters on long section, and then we take a sample of the grade that goes to our assay lab. And then prior to July, we were basically making a decision. If the grade is good, let's send it to the mill. If the grade is not good, let's send it to various stockpiles, whether it be waste or low grade in nature. That's not good enough, right? So if you have material that is grading good, well above cutoff, but it contains material that is potentially carbonaceous and what's called preg robbing in nature, you better be very, very careful before you put that to the mill. So we had to develop some pretty robust sampling mechanisms over here, where we were not only taking grade profiles, but we were taking qualitative samples on whether or not the material was going to be high or low preg robbing in nature. So we were not just doing grade control, we were doing lithological control on how we were taking that material and moving it over to our plants and processing it in batches. Now, that was not like turning on a switch, right? So we had to develop the testing protocols. We had to develop our laboratory procedures in order to be doing these cyanide spike tests to measure preg robbing the nature of our material. And then we had to do a lot of training with our grade control geologists as well as our plant operators to make sure that the stockpiles that you see in the back right over there are processed with very tailored recipes of batches going into the mill to make sure that we maximize the amount of recovery that's coming out based on the type of material that's going through these mills. It is very fortunate that we had the ability to mine this mine as selectively as we did, because more or less seamlessly we were able to implement all of these processes and procedures and get the right batch recipes going into that crusher and eventually the mill, such that right now our experience with recoveries is now it's back up to about 85%, almost exactly where we would expect to be from a metallurgical point of view. So I have to say, like, even though this was expected, I mean, you can see it in the ore body. It's like when this goes from your lovely tan color mochaccino type ore body over there to that very dark black, you can see it obviously. So we knew about this happening, but there was a confluence of events that caused us to have that diminution of recovery. So we implemented all of these processes and procedures on August 7th. It takes maybe about 48 hours of residence time over at our plant before you see any clear recovery change. And then really starting August 10th, our recoveries are back in line. That is a huge deal for this company. This was a major operational challenge that we needed to overcome. It speaks to the talent level that we have over at site. It obviously speaks to our processes and protocols. It speaks to our ability to change things kind of on a dime. But we were very fortunate that we were able to get back to recoveries, because it was a big challenge.